The Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cosatu, is rejecting the proposed salary increase for political office bearers. This comes after the Independent Commission on the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers recommended a 3% salary increase for political office bearers. For more on this, we're joined by Matthew Parks, Cosatu Parliamentary Coordinator. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon, Mr. Parks. So you characterize this as tone deaf and embarrassing. Why?
Well, we're facing many crises at once. Public service in 2020 didn't get an increase, and last year they got a below inflation increase. Many workers across many sectors of the private sector didn't get increases for the past 2 years. At Eskom, workers got a 1.5% increase. So workers have been bleeding, and workers get paid a fraction of what members of cabinet or members of the judiciary get paid. At the same time, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court earlier this year, both ruled in government's favor around the 2020 Public Service Wage Agreement, where they said public servants don't deserve an increase for 2020. So it's quite ironic that right now this commission has now recommended a 3% increase for judges, for members of cabinet, provincial cabinet, members of parliament, and so forth. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth of workers that the very same judiciary which said that public servants don't deserve an increase has now pleaded for a 20% increase, in fact, for members of the judiciary. It's quite bizarre that Treasury, in its submission to this commission, motivated for members of parliament to get an increase to avoid their pensions being eroded by inflation and to avoid members of parliament becoming demoralized. These are the very same issues that public servants, teachers and nurses and doctors, police officers, prison wardens, cleaners, who get paid far less than they do, had raised, and Treasury had dismissed them with contempt. So we think it's quite unfair for this commission to make this kind of a recommendation. They have often done so over many years, where both the current president and the previous president had actually rejected their proposals. But we don't think it can be correct in this climate when workers have been bleeding, have lost wages, are highly indebted, that we can then say, let's give an increase to these very same people who have sought to deny workers legitimate increases. So we think for us, the president should reject it, and it should really be rejected with the contempt it deserves. We think going forward that the commission actually needs to engage not just with members of cabinet who've got a direct conflict of interest in their recommendations, but in fact they should also be engaging with workers and the public as well to see what do they think about what politicians earn, what judges earn.
And Mr. Parks, what would you then rather say to somebody that says, well, it's a mere 3%, of what consequence will it be?
Well, then sure, then let's give public servants the increase that we got received in 2020. Let's make sure public servants can get an inflation increase for this year. Let's make sure workers across all sectors of the economy, be it clothing, be it agriculture, be it domestic, be it security guards, can also get their increases. Because right now, all we've heard from government and the private sector employees is that they can't afford to pay workers even a small inflationary increase. The other point is that we are the most unequal society in the world, according to the World Bank and many other authorities. We have a huge wage gap. In the public service is about 13-1, the wage gap. In the private sector is about 3 times that. So we think it's about time we start reducing the wage gap. We start becoming a more equal society. Let's provide real solidarity to those who earn very little, to those who are unemployed. We think those who earn a lot, ministers, deputy ministers, premiers, judges, can afford to show a little bit of solidarity to the poor. As we start to build a more equal society to try to overcome the legacies of apartheid. But it can't be the status quo. It can't be correct, for example, that in the retail sector, the mining sector, that the CEOs of these companies make hundreds of thousands of rands every day, but what they pay their cashiers, their cleaners, is not even equivalent to that for the entire year. So I think for us it's a principal issue, and more so when government is pleading poverty, then we shouldn't be giving those on top an increase. We should be aiming whatever resource we have to those who earn the least.
Is it clear to you what the rationale is behind this recommendation and what options are available to you?
Sure. Look, the Commission always makes these kind of recommendations. That is their mandate. And of course, they will look at the issues of inflation and so forth, which can make sense in a normal economic situation, but we're not in a normal economic situation. We think going forward they should be more appreciative of the conditions facing workers, of the economy at large, be a little bit less tone deaf. They think they need to engage with the Public Service Bargaining Council or trade unions, civil society at large, on their views, not just talking to ministers. And of course, this must now go to the President for his final decision. We would call upon him to reject it as he has done in previous years. Ideally, they should be getting a 0% increase. In fact, if not, they should be actually looking at cutting what politicians earn. And of course, the final recommendation must then go to Parliament to vote upon it. And of course, we would appeal to them to vote with a conscience, not to the vote with a bank balance.
Matthew Parks, Cosatu Parliamentary Coordinator, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon.